find yourself waiting for anything to catch you, bring you back up. Unfortunately for you, no one is coming. As you draw your final breath and let the water take you, a glimpse of light engulfs your body. Warmth and saving grace fills your lungs, replacing the water within, and an angel comes to you and lifts you out. You've been freed from this liquid hell, and the images of these angels were a sight to behold, and you find yourself beyond grateful after seeing and coming to. Fire and rescue is holding you in their arms. What was that? An angel? Or simply your brain giving you one last glimpse at the other side? Welcome back to our first Mythos File episode of A Delve Deeper. I'm your host, Joey, and I'm here with my co-host, Nate.
That's me.
Come follow us as we search these files for a deeper understanding, finding, and meaning behind some of the world's greatest mysteries, hauntings, cryptids, and now mythos. Come with us as we attempt to take a delve deeper. And today, if you haven't guessed already, we are talking about beautiful, beautiful angels. And we're going to be talking about that in this episode. And next episode, you guys are going to get the same Mythos file, but we're going to go into the demons and devils and spooky things.
And when we were talking about it, we decided that these things like this deserve something called Mythos files, where it's not quite a cryptid, it's not quite a paranormal, it's, you know what I mean, it's a little bit of everything all in one creature, essentially, that spans across multiple different mythos or mythologies. So we thought it would be really fun to do it this way and split it up this way, so it's a little different, but I think we got this.
Yeah, it's going to be a little different, and I'm really excited for this one because, I personally do love a lot of stories and everything that involves angels and whatnot. I mean, I'm a big fan of, the quote-unquote, the Bible verse. I love them so much. Love Paradisium and all that. That's some of my favorite books, and some of my favorite YouTubers have covered a lot of these stories as well about angels and devils and whatnot, but we're going to go directly into the actual angels themselves and kind of tell you more about them, what they are, and what they mean to certain religions and peoples, because I think it's just really fucking interesting, and that's just me.
It is super interesting, and that's what's cool, is it's not just the Christian or Catholic mythos, if you will, since we're treating all religions the same as mythos in these files. So we're not here to insult anybody or anything like that, but it's cool that these types of beings span not just the Catholic and Christian mythos, but we find them in Norse and Hinduism and Buddhism. Yes, they're crazy.
And there's so many different stories that come with it, and we're gonna go over a ton of them today. And like I said, it just blows my mind because I love religious text stories and stuff like that. Everything that I've ever read, including I've gone into the Torah, the Quran. I've read, obviously I've read the Bible, even spanning to Mormonism, Judaism. I've seen some of their stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff, and I'm a big fan of Norse mythology as well as Greek and Roman. It's all kind of comes together in this big history plot hole. So for me, this is more this is more Joseph and Nathan history time.
Right? Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I still believe to this day that VeggieTales slaps. It was just good. I'm sorry, it was.
They hit it on the mark. That's where I was introduced. I was like, dude, this movie is amazing. This is pretty cool. And it was veggies, vegetables were teaching me this, and I thought that was the cool. I used to watch that all the time. I also watched their Lord of the Beans when I was younger. That was one of my favorites. Yeah, that was one of those things that
dude, that Prince of Egypt movie, I think Disney. I think it was Disney that did it. Yeah,
Stop!
VeggieTales was awesome. I
Stop!
think it was Disney that did
I
that
love
Prince of
that
Egypt
meme so
movie
much.
too about Moses and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a fantastic. There's plenty of fantastic different like representations of religious texts and
Things based
everything.
on that.
And like I said, we're gonna get into some stuff, and it's gonna be absolutely great. Because one of my favorite ones, I'm gonna just dive in here, is Mandaeism, is Urfiel and Marfiel, which is a pair of angels or guardians in the world of light that are always mentioned together. And the world of light is a primeval, transcendental world of which there was a world of darkness that arose for them. And it's mentioned in like a lot of books for the Right Ginza, which is holy scripture in Mandaeism, and it's got a lot of stuff in the I am gonna butcher all these names, so apologies. But the Kolasta prayer, and it gets insane, and I thought that was so cool that these are like the world of light is like completely different from this world of darkness, and it's just these primeval beings and everything, and they're all over the place with like being a divine messenger of light. Their translation directly of Earthas, or what they call them, is excellency, or
Okay.
Utras, which are light world beings. There's so much to this whole thing, which is like insane to me,
And
because I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool sounding. First off,
it is really cool. What I've noticed is it's very interesting to see the similarities. Like these are just the first two, but you'll see it as a common theme as we keep going over these, that they're almost always mentioned as either messengers of light or soldiers of light of some type. Like usually they're an intermediary of some kind. And it's really interesting to see that these, even as old as they are still referenced that way.
well, this is the cool part for me, and like I'm gonna read this portion, and it's something that like blows my mind, and I love like the idea of this stuff. So like the benevolent beings live in this like celestial dwelling in the world of light, and communicate via telepathy, which I know that there's like a ton of these, that in so many of these religions they don't really speak with a mouth. It's like, oh, it was a voice in my head. It's like telepathy is something that's just like reoccurring in this so often, and I think that is such a cool connection. Even with like these different symbolisms and different religions, they always come to this same similar idea of like these things are telepathic. There are always like divine messengers that come from the heavens and all this other stuff, because like the world of darkness is Mandaeism's like version of hell, and like the world of light is the version of their heaven, right? So it's like they're essentially these angel beings that again come from the sky, come down and deliver a message, and they do it with telepathy, which is like, it blew my mind when I saw how many of these have so similar concepts with them, and I was like, that's so cool.
Even the ones that like look really, really weird, or some of the more biblically accurate ones that don't have like mouths or anything like that, they're still able to give those messages, and it's like sliding into somebody's DMs, but even faster. You know what I mean? It's just directly like
direct link. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly.
The Uthra though are just like one of them that I really, really like, specifically for the amount of stuff that they have going on. Because like in terms of their hierarchy, there is like God, or whatever type of God is kind of said right in this text, and then directly below that is always the angels, again, which is another thing that you'll see a ton of when we start talking more about in depth of the other ones. But like,
So
it's crazy.
I actually have something that kind of breaks this down a little bit, at least in terms of like the Catholic and Christian type mythos. And they straight up a 5th century Catholic monk, who was commonly referred to as Pseudo Dionysus. So basically, the fake Greek god of wine and pleasure, right? So I think it's hilarious that this is where this text comes from, because dude could have just been drunk one day. But he established basically that like the common thinking is there's 9 types or choirs of angels, and there's like the seraphims that contemplate and adore God directly. There's the second like group or choir of that. They're known as like virtues or powers, and they assist with like governing the natural order and stuff. And then the third group is supposed to like interact and serve humanity, and that's where we get into like the archangels and stuff like that. And what's really strange to me with the archangels too is the inconsistency with the amount of them. But it's just it's crazy that it breaks
I
those
see
down.
that a lot. I see that inconsistency a lot, just because we have so many Bible verse things.
Yeah.
Right, like I was saying earlier with certain books and whatnot, like they're not technically a part of the Bible, but some of them are technically subsidiaries of it, so they're kind of canon, kind of not. So it's like some people see them as that, some people don't. So like,
well, yeah, it
gets
been
confusing
retranslated like 300 times.
Yeah, like if you don't like get really into it or really deep into it, you'll see and find a lot of stuff. What is it?
If you look up a picture of the Gutenberg Bible, just see how much larger it is in comparison to like today's Bibles, and you realize how much has actually been left out or changed.
It's crazy because like if you read like Dante's Inferno or the like just the Divine Comedy in general, that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people get kind of off, is that it's not actually a part of the Bible or part of anything to do with like Christianity. It's kind of like it's like the Odyssey from Homer. It's just a story written by a playwright. So it's a really cool story, and if you guys haven't read it, I highly recommend that you go read those books, because there's so much to it that like brings forth so much understanding of like this guy's vision of what these different levels of hell would be or whatnot, including when you get into the end, like purgatory, and even when he gets to heaven. That last book, if you read it, has a lot of reference to things that we're talking about, especially here. So, okay, another thing I have to touch on before I'm done with the Uthros, Nate, is that these Uthros are occasionally mentioned throughout, being called Anana, which is a heavenly cloud that forms around and is interpreted to be a female body consort type thing, but like that's usually what is considered the dwelling place of these things. So it's like
they live on a sexy cloud?
Pretty much.
Heck.
And so like it's this big cloud that envelops like a lot of these benevolent beings. But the thing is that these things are like living to them. Right? So like there's like heavenly grapevines throughout this place, and like life grows on these like clouds, right?
Okay.
And so everything kind of lives on it.
So
but
One
the
Piece
thing
was
that's
right.
really interesting, it's just like they're also like hidden by this same entity.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess. It just looks like a cloud to normal people.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing that I was like, huh. That's
I gotta
cool.
admit, it's more creative than the Greeks. Oh yeah, let's put them on the top of a big ass mountain.
You can climb it? Oh, anyone can climb it. Okay,
Yeah.
if you're not struck by Zeus first.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. I don't think I'm gonna try that.
You can only climb it if you hold this bag of metal coins above your head the whole trail and go during a thunderstorm. No reason.
They're like, oh, well, also, you can do anything once.
Exactly. Everything's edible once, children.
Exactly. And I think that's all the research I really have on like the Uthros. And the rest of it's like goes into like their priesthoods, their prophets, their scriptures and stuff. And we're not here to do that. I just wanted to talk specifically about their kinds of angels, and I thought
Oh, yeah.
that was just really interesting for them for Mandaism.
It is. That one is really interesting. I do like again how they kind of set the tone for the rest of them too, because it's like almost all of them are either messengers or soldiers of some kind. Almost
Yeah.
all of them have that telepathy power and can speak directly into your mind, and that's shared across these types. In Norse mythology, the Valkyries, which were the winged messengers of Odin, you know what I mean? They had that
Yeah.
telepathy power. In Celtic mythology, they're considered a type of fae or fairy creature. They have that type of power, and it's just like you said, it's a consistent common trope amongst these beings. And because we see so much of it, it's almost back like into the cryptids. It's like because we see it so much, who knows? You know?
Which, dare I say, that I have my own theories about the angels, but I'll get into that later because Nate, you have a ton of research yourself, my brother. So
So yeah,
yes.
So I'm gonna kind of tie it back a little bit to like those 9 choirs that we talked about, and just kind of like, again, the descriptions and the names of some of these might be like more familiar to certain people, and I think that's a good place to kind of like start. So like for instance, I talked about that first group, the seraphims. Like it's very specific how they look when you cross-reference all the different texts and stuff. So, for instance, like it's very common that seraphims have 6 wings, and that seems to be like a symbol, like the amount of wings or the way their wings are colored or shaped. That seems to be a different symbol indicating different angels as well. And what's interesting is seraphim actually means burning ones too, and that's crazy. So, almost every story about seraphim, they're on fucking fire. Like.
They do say that it's like a light because I have a quote here from this is that it's a light burning brightly like a flame.
Right.
So it's not they're not directly saying that, but everybody interprets it that way because they're like this dude is like, bro, it's so bright. You look at it like you're directly looking into a fire.
Yeah. But it's just light, but they do say that it like it feels like it has the force of like the fire, but it doesn't necessarily burn.
Yeah,
so that's
and
very...
don't forget that our local seraphim are also the ones that say all the time when they come into contact with anybody, they're like, "Do not fear," and you're like, "Oh, oh my god!"
Yeah. When you guys are thinking of the biblically accurate angels and you're thinking of the rotating rings covered in eyes, those are actually the thrones of the seraphim. The seraphim is like in the middle of that ring. This one, they're in the same group, and this one makes me laugh very hard. So cherubim are in the same group as seraphim, and I don't know why seraphim got the cool rotating wheel with all the eyes, and cherubim got turned into little naked babies.
They get little baby men.
Right, because their actual description is terrifying. 4 faces and 4 wings, 2 that cover their feet and 2 they use to fly. Like, I was not getting any of that when I think cherub. You know what I mean?
You're like, oh, it's a little cherubim. It's a cute little baby. And then you're like, oh god, multi-faced man.
Yeah, 4 faces. Oh my god, no thanks.
That to me is like, okay, like, as much as I love the depictions, and I think that the descriptions of the angels themselves, like, biblically accurate, way cooler than what we brought up. Way cooler than, like, the white dressed angel. I'm gonna be for real. Like, instead of that, like, dude, if somebody came up to me and was like, Joey, I just I think you really need this angel in your house. It's really gonna help you. And you bring me a seraphim or a cherubim. It's like an actual like articulate piece from biblically accurate lore. I'm putting that up. It's going on my mantle. It's going. I'll let that guy watch because he's got the eyes to do so. So I'm just saying, but like it's so badass, and I'm kind of sad that they didn't continue using the actual referencing from the biblical, and like mostly get that. I can't remember what artist it was. Do you remember the artist that kind of transformed the cherubim?
I don't have that one written down. No. But yeah, it was along the same times as like Michelangelo and stuff. It was along those types of times.
Raphael.
Yes.
It was him who painted the Sistine Madonna, or like the church. He was the one that brought the baby angels, like the depiction we have today. A lot of it comes from Raphael's depiction because they wanted like a more accepting, graceful feeling from angels, and he painted that for them. But that's where we get the image that we do today of those baby with wings, the angels with the flowing white dresses that are just too winged. Like we get a lot of that because those robed ones are specifically more, if I remember right, they're closer to like the 7 or 9.
So those
I think it's 7 archangels.
The 7 archangels actually fall in the third group. This is the first group. These are the ones that are like attendants to the throne of God, and like the cherubim contemplate God's providence to the rest of the groups. These ones are like basically, I don't want to say peons, but like they're guard dogs and scholars.
On the chain of command, they're not very high up.
Right. The second group, the group above them, is actually a bit more abstract, and it's separated into 3. It's dominions, which are Lord of the Lower Choirs and humanity. They take their light basically from the first group, and they help govern the laws of the universe. And then there's virtues, which run the operation of movement in the universe. So like they're the ones that are associated with like the rotation of the planets and the reason that the seasons change and stuff like that. And then there's powers, and they assist with governing the natural order. So they decide, this animal is a prey animal, this animal is a predator. And they're more like the warrior angels. The powers are the ones that are supposed to be like making up the brunt of heaven's army, basically, if they go to war. And then that third group, that's where the archangels come in, as well as the principalities. And guardian angels are in this one too. And you actually have a bit on the archangels. I think that'd be a good segue into that.
Yeah, the 7 archangels are it's a concept from early Jewish literature and Christianity in their texts for the angels who serve God directly. And if you haven't heard of them before, I guarantee you know the names.
Angelic Special Forces.
Yeah, pretty much. But like if you haven't heard them before, I guarantee you do know them. They're just like maybe in the back of your head.
You've definitely heard at least 4 or 5 of the names.
There's a couple of them that are pretty hard to like go from, and these ones are from the Eastern Orthodox, which is let me actually go through here because I have some. So the Latin Christianity ones invoked by name is like Michael, Gabriel, Raphael. Yeah,
and
so like
they don't say it, but it's important to note Lucifer is in that. Lucifer was an archangel who fell. He's no longer an archangel, but he was
considered God's most beautiful angel.
Well. And he was an archangel. Like,
yeah, but so there's like I said, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael are some of the most popular ones that people know. The other ones that are less popular and less known are like Serail, Sadakio, Sarathael, Ananiel, and there's technically 8 in I believe in the Eastern Orthodox. There's 8, which is Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, as well as Salathiel, Jagugiel, Barachiel, and Jeremiah.
A lot of L's. They all end in L.
And the Eastern Orthodox is just a separate portion of Christianity that kind of separated itself from the regular Christianity side of things that we know from like popular media, right? But you'll hear like the angel, Michael, or like, oh gosh, I can't remember every single one off the top of my head.
And there's so many that have split off from that. That's why if you go to like a big city, there's a Church of Latter-day Saints, a Church of Seventh-day Advents, a Church of, you know what I mean? There's so many that are, at their core, very, very similar. I'm not going to say the same, because I don't want to risk offending anyone, but they're very similar at their core.
They have, they're all split. It's like the Roman Catholic stuff too. It's like still Catholicism and Christianity, Catholic, they all kind of take from the same olive tree, right? They kind of all take from that same little thing. They all have their same stuff with originalities coming from like the Judaism and stuff, and like they just kind of switch it up depending on if it's like the Latin part or the Eastern Catholics or Lutheranism, Angelicism. Like there's a ton of different stuff that goes on with these that are just like sometimes get a little messy at times. But most of them have the archangels. There's 7, 8, or 9, and that's where a lot of confusion gets from, because like some people will say 8 because technically Lucifer was one of them, but they are going to say like, oh, well, he fell, so he's not technically an archangel anymore.
Right.
Some people say 7 because, they don't include Uriel or the other ones, where like obviously like the Orthodox goes with 8 because they just added like Uriel, Salathiel, Jagugiel, stuff like that. So like there's
and in terms of like that. In terms of like a matchup side versus side wartime scenario, 7 archangels for 7 deadly sins, I get it. Like,
which actually came from Dante's Inferno. Which it's insane because like the 7 deadly sins I'm pretty sure aren't canon.
That would not surprise me, but they're so accepted anymore that, kinda. like it's basically Dragon Ball GT at this point. Like, yeah, it's not canon, but it pretty much is. Everyone's gonna accept it as such, and who knows, maybe a updated lore to the Bible verse will drop in the future and it'll make it canon. That's what happened with GT.
So for people out there, the 7 deadly sins, from what I'm completely aware of, from my reading of the Bible and everything, they're not explicitly listed, and they're not really in there in times of. It's kind of like so side as the story Bible that came forth with that.
Right, as far as I remember growing up with the Bible, it's not that there was 7 deadly sins, it's that there was 10 commandments. And basically, the sins were, like, listed in there. So it was like, thou shalt not commit adultery, and thou shalt not steal, and things like that.
Well, it's like because that's the playoff that we got from, like, Dante's Inferno and stuff, is he was directly just kind of translating those a little bit, right? Because, like you were saying, is, like, obviously, like, don't steal. Is like a thing, like, okay, don't have envy for somebody else's stuff, or thou shalt not
don't
kill,
covet thy neighbor,
don't wrath, or stuff like that. So like they're direct from certain sources, but it isn't something that's directly tied into the Bible. So I always think that's such an interesting thing, because it is so. Again, there's so many different things that get posted up in media and whatnot about these different things, but it's like, I just love it. I love it. I love all
Oh
the
yeah.
lore and all the stuff like that. But there's your little Bible fact for you if you didn't know: is the
Right.
7 deadly sins aren't technically Bible canon. They're
So
like we're
it's
getting into like the George Lucas Star Wars versus the Disney Star Wars, right?
yeah.
They're like they're the same guy, but some of it's not canon anymore.
Right.
So
And it's interesting that you actually bring up like how they are like in media, because again that's something that I always love to talk about, is how they affected us as pop culture and as, you know, society growing up. And like angels are so common that like we develop terms for them, you know what I mean? There's a guardian angel, someone that's looking out for you. An angel fall from grace is like usually a good girl or something that did something horrible, you know what I mean? An angel of
mhm.
mercy or angel of death is a term for a serial killer that takes dying or sick people and kills them. We have angel numbers, which are number sequences that are supposed to bring luck to the person who notices them. You know, even just angel itself is just a term. If you're like, oh, she's an angel or he's an angel, you'd think, okay, that's a good person, that's a nice person.
Yeah, or like if you know, you know, in the South, be like, oh, bless your heart. That just means you're stupid. So I just want to let you know, if people say
Yeah.
that to you, and they're from the South, it's not usually a good thing. Usually when I grew up, my grandma used to say that to people she thought were stupid as fuck. Cause she's like, oh, well,
Oh yeah.
bless your heart, aren't you just a little? It's like it's like when you try to do a good thing, but in the end it's kind of like a pain in the ass. That's what she
My
used to tell me. So
My grandma's from deep South Texas, and she used to say that to my stepmother all the time because she doesn't like her. So it'd be,
yeah,
"Oh, bless your heart," and then when she would leave, it would be, "I don't know what your father sees in her, thinking with the wrong damn head again."
I'm just saying it's one of those things where like I love it. I love it's just so dumb, but the like I said, the 7 archangels is just so prominent in not just like TV or like books, but like tons of other media. I mean, if you've ever played a Persona game,
Oh yeah,
Persona has I believe it's Gabriel. Yeah,
yeah,
Persona has Gabriel, and he's playing. He's got the blades, I believe. Let's see.
yeah. Devil May Cry talks about him.
Yes, yes, yes.
Supernatural, the TV show, has tons of arcs involving them. Like they have definitely in like they are ingratiated. I don't know if that's the right word. In our culture.
Oh, they're everywhere. Like it's super cool to see even like media and stuff do stuff with them. I love it personally. I really do love the usage that they have in such different places of like gaming. We see it a lot in gaming too,
Oh yeah.
like we can kind of tie this right into the Norse stuff with like the Valkyries.
Oh yeah.
Like
God
if
of
you
War.
played God of War, yeah, God of War specifically the new one from 2016, I believe, had God, now I feel old.
There
I'm
was
not that old,
Gunnar and
but
Sigrun, and they had the Valkyries.
yeah, the Valkyries in that were like super cool. I love that
Yeah.
game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But like I said, like these angels get depicted all over the place because like even the
Oh yeah.
archangels in the Valkyrie terms, they kind
Yeah.
of have their own archangels.
Kind of, yeah. They're called the
It kind of
Shield
already have them.
Maidens.
Yeah, and they're kind of their own separate thing in mythology. But you'll see that they have similar tie-ins, right?
Oh yeah. In other places that mention that too, other things break them down as well. So for instance, there is devas from Buddhism, and what's crazy with them is they're typically described as like the same types as messengers of light or soldiers, but
Mhm.
devas in Hinduism are like the gods are devas. It's weird. It's like Brahma and Shiva are considered devas, but they're also considered deities.
Yeah.
And then in Buddhism they're called asparas. So I'm sorry for that. But in asparas, there's like they separate them into worldly Asparas and divine Asparas. So there's 34 worldly Asparas and there's only 10 divine Asparas. So it's like it's that same thing again where there's like a very specific select group that is just placed above the rest.
Yeah, there seem, because I'm reading along with you on that stuff because I have my own stuff about it. But like that exact thing is like you notice that there's always this similar chain of command. They always don't seem to talk with their mouths. They don't
Yeah.
always. They seem to be very telepathic in nature. I mean, even in different ones like Greek and Roman, people
Yeah.
are chosen by the gods, and they have them just talk to them in their head. No,
Yeah, and they have
hey,
the
by
power
way,
to fly or at least teleport. Like,
yeah, it's like, well, Pluto did tell me to drown these guys, so
yeah. Oh yeah, we'll do
What are
a
you
Greek
gonna do?
mythos definitely one day because the Greek gods not good people turns out.
oh, absolute menaces to society. But yeah, this hierarchy that we see a lot of is like super interesting to me, just because again, there's so much there that get pushed to the side almost, right?
I will
for me,
say
it's just interesting.
I will say in the Christian and Catholic mythos, in my own personal opinion, like Lucifer was an archangel who defied God, and that's why he fell and was cast out. And that sends some weird tones, especially when you combine it with I believe it's called the Eucharist, where you eat Jesus's flesh and drink Jesus's blood and tell him he's your Lord and Savior and no one else. It feels less angelic when you break down the components of it that way. I'm just saying.
Well, if we're going to talk about that portion, I'll say a little bit of my own gripe about it. My biggest thing, I will say this, and I know I'm going to get flack for it regardless, is I grew up Christian, and I never really understood reading the Bible growing up when people are like, oh, Lucifer is the worst of the worst, he's the reason for all sin and all this other stuff. And then at the end of the day, there's like, let me look it up here.
Well, and then there's theories and stuff while you're looking that up that are like, actually it was Adam that ate the apple and not Eve, and that's why men have Adam's apples. And there's a theory that it was a pomegranate and not even an apple. And Adam and Eve got cast out and they had 2 kids, Cain and Abel, and then Cain and Abel got married. To who?
Did you know that Mormons believe Cain is Sasquatch?
That is amazing. I did not know that.
I'm not kidding. My brother is Mormon, and he told me about this. A lot of scripture believe that Cain is Sasquatch.
Like cursed to be a Sasquatch because he killed his brother?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's
insane.
That's insane. But so according to the Bible, so my one gripe about this is that compared to Lucifer, so in the Bible, there's about 4 deaths from Lucifer compared to the 2,391,421 people that God killed. And so I'm not saying that if you believe in whatever that you're a bad person. I'm not saying that. We're not saying that. Just FYI, we're not saying any of that. If you guys believe in the Bible and believe or go into the Quran or whatever your belief is, that's totally fine. You do you, and we're good with that. But I'm just saying my own gripe is that there's way too many deaths in that guy. Why are we recording that? You would think it would be flip-flop, just a little bit.
I'm going to plug this song here real quick. Thank You God by Tim Minchin. Go listen to it. Thank me later.
But that's my personal gripe. And like I said, you can't come at me. I grew up Christian, okay? I did read the Bible very many times growing up.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, that's exactly what this feels like. That's what it feels like right now. It's like I'm putting myself on blast. I'm like, wait.
No, but, I mean, it's just, you're just pointing out, this is something that happens. Like, it's written right there in black and white. And again, in about 300 different translations, but it is there. The Bible, #1 selling book of all time. Like, it just is. But I think it's really cool when you get into the other cultures and religions. Like, for instance, in Celtic mythology, they're seen as like a type of fae or fairy.
Which
They
their
like
belief in fae and fairies and goblins and ghouls, they got some pretty cool stuff that they believe in for Celtic. I did a lot of research for Celtic when I was younger myself.
So
and
there
I
actually
think
is
cool stuff.
there's actually a study, right? And it's basically how their beliefs and stuff back then affect like their world based on science and stuff that we know now. It's literally called pagan metaphysics.
Yeah, I heard
And
of
they
that.
yeah, they have concepts of angels and demons, and it's still science. They're like this is what we're using until we have an answer, but we don't have an answer at the moment. You know what I mean?
Well, there's tons of stuff. I mean, even in like paintings, like if you look
Oh, yeah.
through a lot of paintings for like Christianity, Catholicism, stuff like that, all their angels are always depicted floating in a sky. And this goes into my theory, Nate. Yes, I'm putting on the tinfoil hat. This is a delve deeper damage. You are here for a reason.
That's right. Get your
So
tinfoil stovetop hats.
yeah, and so I'm putting mine on right now. And the thing is, I gotta say this. My biggest belief is that the angels that they saw in early times are actually like alien presence, UAPs, stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
I believe that. I think it just makes more sense that way for me. With like, oh, they came down from the heavens and they just technologically, I have no idea what this is, but God. And it's like, yeah, imagine the drones people are seeing in like New Jersey and shit. And like, imagine you didn't have a cell phone or a concept of a phone or anything, and you were primitive. You too would probably be like, well, there's like a ton of angels in the sky, so I think that's not a good thing, guys.
I like to believe
good times.
I like to believe too that with human nature, they kind of twisted it to be what they wanted. So, like, for instance, it was like aliens would come down and talk to this dude and be like, "Hey, man, you got to quit shitting in buckets in your house. Like, you're about to cause damage. You got to find a way to deal with that." And he was like, "Oh yes, whatever you say, angels." And they were just like, "Okay, cool. Just quit shitting in buckets." And they leave. And then he like turns to his friend and he's like, "Did you hear that, Joe? The aliens said we need to raise taxes to 3% and build ghettos for the poor." Like,
there's so many different things that, like, again, with the whole alien thing, like, I love it because it would be something that would be totally inhuman.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, imagine an alien with, like, because in my brain I'm like, what is something that could look like wings? Would be like some form of like maybe moving illusion, maybe kind of like the jellyfish. I was thinking about the jellyfish UAPs.
Oh yeah, the jellyfish
earlier.
UAPs.
Like, that would be something that, like, from a distance you might see it and be like, oh my god, that thing's got wings, you know, like, or something to that effect that might be kind of like influencing their, like, what for you as a peasant in before times in like 300, right? You're kind of
back in the before four.
You're like looking up at that. You're like, hey guys, oh, it kind of looks like bird wings, don't you think? And you're like, yeah, kind of does. Like, we kind of reference things look like other things. I mean, jellyfish UAP, we say jellyfish, right? Because that's what we know. That's something that we can all understand. So at the time, imagine you're like, oh, birds have wings and are flying and have these things. That thing has to have wings. It looks like it has a lot of wings. Huh. You know, like something like that would translate into this. And I totally have that same belief with this. Same thing with my belief that, like, medieval times, they found a T-Rex skull and some dude was like, yeah, it was a fucking dragon. Like, you know,
goddamn
like,
dragons.
So, like, something there is kind of like they're taking what they know and mixing it with things they don't know.
Right.
But that's my theory. That's Joey's tinfoil hat of the day. That's my belief. That's what I think of. Because I just think it's so coincidental, and there's tons of paintings and stuff that depict like strange objects in the sky emitting light over seas or overhead of like a big city, and people just paint them, and they're like, is this like normal to you? You know, like, it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall at that point, at that time, you know?
Right. I have a tinfoil hat moment of my own, but it's I'm not sure if I would call this my personal belief, but it's a very interesting article, and it's relevant to the topic, and I kind of want to read it. But
Okay.
This is also a bit of a tinfoil hat moment. Smidgen. So it starts out, where have angels been? Why now has there been a large increase in angelic sightings and encounters? Why haven't they been here before? Well, they have, but some mythologies suggest they've been restricted from contact. Some of these mythologies also explain why angels left Earth for a time and have now returned. Alright, here's the tinfoil hat coming. One of the most common of these theories comes from the legends of Atlantis. It seems to have started with the height of the Atlantean Civil War. Love throwing that out there like that is a fact. That's hilarious.
It is a fact, Nate. What are you talking about?
Atlanteans clearly had a civil war. Where do you think squirt guns came from? But that civil war is what is theorized to have resulted in the continent's final destruction, and this destruction created an enormous karmic shift in the universal energies that cast our planet into a quarantine, segregating our connection to the rest of the universe, sort of divine punishment. Now, what I love about that theory is one of my all-time favorite theories is that we live in a simulation that is basically serving as like a probationary period until we're introduced to a galactic population. I love that theory, but it falls along this. It's like, well, yeah, especially with the aliens could have been Atlanteans, and the fact that it sunk into the ocean and that's where they are now, that whole theory, and then this, it's like, if they're mad that we sunk them, I get it, man. Like,
so,
like,
what I'm hearing from this little article is that they're like, oh, we can't deal with those guys. Those guys are way too violent. And then like we got like a temporary ban. We got like a 30-day Twitch ban.
Yeah.
And
basically
they were like, oh, well, you can't come up here. So are you saying that there's a galactic federation that might be housing aliens up there, and they just thought we were too violent, and now that they're coming back, all of a sudden they're like, are they still violent? And then meanwhile, TikTok videos would be like, I shot at one of the UAPs. It's like a dude with an assault rifle. Like, dude.
All I'm saying is that that's why most of the angelic sightings were, beautiful Greek and Roman periods, and none was at like a Moonshiner's Valley in Virginia. Did you see that big ass bird, Jim Bob? I swear it was speaking. We need to tone back the alcohol.
Hell, that shit was flying like a goddamn F-150 and going on the highway. You're like, oh my god. He's like, yeah, I shot about it with my 22. I hit that damn thing going on. But I don't think it stopped because it crashed down there, and you can see that there's a bunch of policemen over there, and goddamn pigs. But it's just going on and on. I can imagine. But
apparently this theory has enough traction that people are calling the time between when the Atlantean thing happened and when angels started reappearing, supposedly, as the Veil of Forgetfulness. And that is insane. Like, just, I can't believe that, like, so many people buy into this so much and believe this so hard with all their hearts that, like, they're associating, like, centuries worth of time to, like, oh yeah, the angels weren't here, that's why it sucked. Like, what?
Dude, I know the angels fight. Angels, we're getting a new angel drop.
New angel drop, new angel DLC before GTA 6.
Don't worry, we got new skins coming, guys. We're working about 2.5 millennia on this one.
I need the skibbity toilet angel, please. No,
yeah, exactly. new angel wraps.
Right.
My angel camo.
And then that's
badges.
not even talking about like the angel of death or Cupid, the angel of love. You know what I mean? Like,
fuck that little guy.
Like Cupid all drunk just like shoots a table. I decide who falls in love. But that's a table.
I fucking love this table.
It's a good looking table though. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just saying, some of the it's funny because if you look at Cupid in the pictures of the cherubs, that's kind of like the idea where he came from is the cherubs. And you're like, it's the cherubs, they're so cute, and then like you're like
Right.
Cupid must look like an actual horrific being. I have to imagine he looks just as fuck.
I like the Fairly Odd Parents rendition of him. No, I'm just kidding.
Ooh, yeah.
But it is interesting again to see that these celestial beings, known as either messengers or soldiers, usually with the ability to fly, if not straight up winged, are across all these different religions, all these different myths, all these different stories. Like, it's kind of how I feel with dragons. So many people have described something so similar for so long across so many different areas, with such a lack of being able to communicate, having those types of consistencies. It's almost hard to believe there wasn't
put
something.
them off. It's hard
Yeah.
to say like that's like okay, Chinese dragons, and then you get to like European dragons. Like they're on opposite sides of the goddamn country. You know,
Right,
it's not
world.
like somebody was like, yeah, I guess so, huh?
Country.
I'm sitting here thinking it's like a
The country
Shmali,
of
and then I think,
Pangea.
yes, I'm delving way too deep, but
All
so
the deep.
the deep. Anyway, so like with that, like I just think it's interesting to see them like across the world, and like even here we have our own dragons, and like Scottish, Ireland, they have their own. Norse has their own dragons, and they
Don't get me
thought
into the difference between
dragons-
dragons, drakes, and wyverns.
Oh, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of different types, but one of the things that I really liked about like the Norse specifically with that is like they were like, these things are so goddamn powerful. We're gonna throw them on our boats, make
Yeah.
boat heads out of them. You're like, okay.
Okay.
So like
Yes.
that's just so interesting because it's just like you're saying, it's the same thing with angels. Like
Yeah.
they're in almost every religion. They're in almost all of them have this same descriptor of like a grand being below God. God has to have his HR people. But so like he's got his HR department and it's full of all these angels, and they always have like this telepathic reach. They can talk to us, they can do whatever, they can send messages via like brain scan. And so like there's tons of interesting stuff that I really love about all of it, and like I love Bible stories and the Bible verse. It's terrific. I think all of them are really fun. And even if they're like stories to just give you a general theme, and maybe you don't believe in like the truth of it, like if you're like, oh, I don't really believe that like Cain and Abel was actually a thing, but like the actual message of it is like one of those things where it's like these stories come from everywhere, and it is so interesting to me to see them and see them in action, and see after doing this research, I'm gonna say like the angels portions of it is just so vast. But even though there's a vast ocean of them, they're all fish. They're all kind of categorized the same, you know.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Which means that angels only get one spot on the cake chart. Sorry, everybody.
They're also aliens.
They are also aliens.
But
And
yeah,
apparently Sasquatch. So
Sasquatch is Cain. Everybody, just remember that. Cain, if you ever are listening to this out in the wilderness, don't say I didn't mention you. All right, straight
if
from
I ever
Joey
see a
himself.
Bigfoot in the wild, I'm totally gonna be like,
Oh my
Cain,
god,
is that you?
that's why he's not answering. That's why we haven't been able to find him. We're calling him the wrong fucking name, dude. Like, dude, it's Sasquatch, and he's like, who the fuck is Sasquatch? I'm out of here.
I saw a comic one time, and it was like a park ranger, and he was like, "Oh my god, it's Bigfoot!" And Bigfoot turns around and goes, "Oh my god, it's Tiny Wiener!" And then it shows a ranger back at headquarters, and the other guy's like, "See anything cool out there?" He's like, "No," and in tears.
That's exactly what I imagine, bro. It's like fucking just in there, Sasquatch. Let me get a picture. He's like, dude, he must be. What the? Who the fuck is out here named Sasquatch? Fucking dumb as fuck. And then meanwhile, if you're like, Kane, he's like, oh, what's up? But yeah, that's pretty much all I had on the Angel side of things. And I know this is our first Mythos file, but this is also going to be a two-parter for you guys as well. I just want to let you guys know that. So unless you have anything more, Nate, I'm all out of Angel stuff. Your silence is deafening, my friend. But with that, I think that's going to be pretty much everything we have here. We've kind of delved as deep as we can here on the Angels. And I gotta say, I really appreciate the love we've got from everybody. And honestly, the amount of views we got on our little Sasquatch video last time. Thank you guys so much. Hope you guys enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun to make that. And you had to enjoy my theory on I don't really like Sasquatch that much. It's not very believable for me. But I'm just saying our big boy out in the Himalayas, he's real. He's real. I believe he's real. He's maybe he's actually the Valley of Headless Men uh reasoning. So and for those of you that are going to be watching this one, it'll be after the Valley of Headless Men. So thank you guys for watching that as well. That was probably one of my favorite episodes to go through. And I do have to say, next time for Devils, we're going to have a ton more stuff as well. It's going to be really fun to get into that for this two-parter. And after this, we'll go back to probably our little cryptids and kind of see what cryptid we want to go into. But this next time, I said we're going to do Mythos File 1 Part 2, and it's going to be Devils. And with that, thanks guys so much. Love you, Devils. Mwah, mwah, mwah. And we'll see you guys next time.